Welcome to the Worthy Woman podcast with Aston Simmons. And today I have a beautiful, powerful guest, beautiful Emily Todd. We were introduced by another beautiful woman, Beck, and we have very similar interests. We were just literally talking off air and could have recorded a whole podcast on our chat. So I really want to introduce this woman because she supports high achieving women just like me, just like so many of the women listening, to break free from the shackles of burnout. And it's so necessary and timely that we have this conversation. We were just speaking about it off air because we see women all the time. I see women all the time. I work with women and Emily works with women who are disconnected from their radiance. You know, they don't know how to have fun anymore. They don't know what play even means to them anymore. Like the word aliveness just feels like this far away thing that they experienced once upon a time, you know, especially for the mums. So I'm so excited to have this conversation. You are going to want to stick around for this. We're going to be covering, Emily's going to share her story in a moment, but we're going to be covering how to get out of this cycle of burnout, how to stop all the shoulds. We were just talking about the shoulds, like literally shitting all over ourselves and just not allowing ourselves to have any play or pleasure or fun. And how that creates this disconnection from ourselves and in turn means we don't trust ourselves. And we were just talking off air how this is all connected. So I am so excited for this conversation. You are going to absolutely love it. And I'm going to hand you over to this beautiful woman, Emily Todd. Please let us know a bit about your story and the amazing work you do, beautiful.
Hello. I am so excited to be here and so thoroughly enjoyed our pre-podcast chat, which we should have recorded because there's so much juice in there. But yeah, I'm Emily Todd. I support women primarily out of burnout, perfecting, pleasing, proving, shoulding, hustling, grinding, all of the things. And I am so passionate about this work because that was me for 14 years in the tech and startup world in New York City and Chicago, and burnout and overwhelm was just the norm. And it was actually in most of my offices, burnout was a badge of honor, right? It was a sign that you're a hard worker, you're a good girl, you really sacrifice yourself. Oh, look at your calendar. It's so booked. Or look at how you're sending emails at 2 a.m. You're just so amazing. Oh, you didn't work. You worked all weekend. You worked on vacation. Good for you. You know, so it was this thing that I was rewarded for and praised for, this obsession with work. And when I reached the point of burnout, which was pretty regular for me, it was like every maybe 4 to 6 months, I would find myself right back in that burnout loop. And I'm so passionate about this work because I would do all the things that HR told me to do or Google told me to do, which was, okay, so you're burnt out. So you just need to schedule some more me time. You just need to take more vacation, just do more yoga, or maybe just switch jobs and then you won't be burnt out. I did all those things. I was always on vacation. I was always trying new meditations and yoga, and I was switching jobs to try and find the magical, burnout free combination. And it never worked. Right. And so I became really interested in studying why this was and understanding why this was, like, because in my opinion, it was always my boss's fault. It was always my company's fault. It was always the economy's fault. It was always my lazy coworkers' fault. It was my boyfriend's fault.
Yes.
And I know you were speaking before in the
100%.
home. It could also be like, well, it's my partner's fault. It's my kid's fault. And I came to this kind of, alarming conclusion that I was the problem, and it was the choices I was repeatedly making and some really hardwired patterns I was in, and the perfectionism and the pleaser and the good girl and all of the things that I was running off of these programs. And so no matter where I was, there I was confronted with my patterns and would create the cycle of burnout wherever I went. So that is a quick backstory. I left the 9-to-5 world at the top of my game 3 years ago. I celebrated my 3-year anniversary this week. I was managing a large team at a tech startup, and, I made it to the top of the mountain. I was like, oh my God, I'm a director in my 30s. Look at my salary. Look, oh my God, I'm so amazing. And it was one of those moments where I realized the view I had been hustling towards really wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And I very much had that moment of, is this all there is? Is this what this, so, okay, so I become a VP in 5 years, and then how is that going to make me feel any different? I feel dead inside. I am propping myself up with wine, with shopping, with expensive vacations, with swiping away on Hinge. Like, I feel terrible. And so I left 3 years ago and never looked back.
Oh, wow. Honestly, such a powerful story. And I know that so many women can relate to this story, because we get sold this lie, this system, this dream that isn't even ours. And we disconnect from ourselves. We disconnect from what I really want. What are my values? What lights me up? Like, it's just about, like you said, getting to that next thing. And as these strong, powerful women that are like, I can do it. And, I can get to that next point and that next mountain. We get there, and it really is like, is this all there is? Like, I know for a lot of women that are mums, or if they're in a relationship, it's like, you sold the whole get a partner, get the house, have the car, have a couple of kids, get a dog. And apparently you're meant to feel fulfilled.
And it's then, all good from there on out.
Yeah. And it's like, I know I had the same thing going on. I got to that point and I was like, this does not feel how I thought it was going to feel. My relationship does not look how I thought it was going to look. And it really was an invitation, the same as you, for me to look inwards and realize, okay, like, how long can I get away with like blaming my kids? Like I was saying, I've had clients that, they thought they've got young babies, and it's like, oh, my baby's not sleeping, that's why I'm exhausted. But now the baby's sleeping and they're still exhausted. Or, my husband wasn't working. I've had that when my husband's been in and out of jobs, and I'm like, that's why I'm exhausted. Then he starts working and then I'm still exhausted. And it's just an invitation, I feel, to get curious and ask that question. There's definitely no blame. There's definitely no judgment. Like, honestly, me and Emily have both been there. That's why we're sharing our stories. But it's just an invitation, I feel, to look and question that and go, okay, well, how long am I going to be saying this? And the saddest part, now we're on the other side, is I realized I was doing it to myself. And I know you shared the same. Like, yes, the system like reconfirms it, and it really tries to keep you in it. Totally get that. But we continue to put ourselves in there. Like you said, it's our patterns, it's our programs, and we didn't offer you, most of us didn't put those patterns and programs there. Like, I totally get that from your childhood and things like that were spoken over you and programmed in. But at some point we get to say, okay, it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility. Yes. And I think that's the powerful thing about realizing, okay, it's me. So it's like taking responsibility. It's not that it's your fault. It's not that you're broken, you need fixing, none of that. But I do get to take responsibility. And I had to do the same as you and really question, is this pattern of perfectionism serving me? Where does it actually come from? And, like, I feel for most women, it comes from this place of like just this survival, this fear. Like, if I can just be good enough, if I can just be right, then I'll be loved, or then I'll be good enough. So it's not coming from a place of love, not love for ourselves, not love for anybody. And that's the same with the people pleasing. It's like, if I do everything for everybody, then I'll get what I want, or then I'll be enough, or then I'll be loved. And then you get there and you're not. And it's because that's not true. So I really want to dive into this, because I know I have a lot of clients who struggle with perfectionism, really struggle with people pleasing, especially if they're mums. They become very self-sacrificing. And that's what I did as well. I think the culture really, celebrates that selfless, exhausted, depleted woman, which is really not helpful. We need to be like
the more exhausted you are, the more booked out you are.
Exactly what you
But
said.
the
Yeah.
less you're sleeping, wow, you are just an amazing person.
Yeah.
You are so selfless. You are freaking Mother Teresa.
Oh
How do
my
you do it
God.
all?
I
And
know.
also, it's like the martyr, right? It's the
Yes.
martyr syndrome, which I mean, I freaking learned from my mom. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but like she had 4 kids, and I learned
Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm one of 5.
yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
totally
So
get that.
yeah, and just seeing my mom for years, just that, and we learn this stuff when we're so young, and I see my
Yeah.
mom when I'm 5, 6 years old, and she's just saying, well, I'm just going to give and give, and my children are my life, and anything for you, and just seeing how
Yes.
miserable she is, but
Yeah.
she's doing it to herself, and must be how it is, and this must be how you operate in a family, and this must be what it means to be a woman and a mother and a wife, and okay.
Yes.
And like, just, I remember even going into the workspace. I think so many women do this in the workspace of like coming in. It's like, well, it's my job to take care of everyone. It's
Mm.
on top of doing my job and doing it as a perfectionist hyperachiever. Let me also take care of everyone in the office. Let me plan all the office parties. Let me plan the cocktail hours. Let me clean up. Oh, you're having a meltdown. Let me give you a coaching session, or, so
Yeah.
we take on
Yes.
so much too, because I think we saw that when we were younger, and we were told like, that's a real woman.
Yeah. And the thing with it is it's so subtle because so much of it is caught as well. So it's not necessarily that your mum sat down with you and said, and taught you, this is how you be a woman. This is what you need to do. You caught it. And this is why I think it's so important that it comes back to us on like an individual soul level, not like waiting for the world, because it's caught. So I know for me, I had a moment 3 years ago where my daughter, for one of her birthdays, like asked for cleaning toys. And that was because I was cleaning all the time. And that was, for me, that was a reflection of like, what am I doing? She thinks that's what
Wow.
I do, and she was under 3 when this happened. I can't actually remember her exact
What a
age, but
moment.
it was such a moment of me realizing she's catching that. I'm not telling her that's what she needs to do. I'm not telling her that's what makes me a good mum. I'm showing her. She's catching that. And the same with my son. He was, but this was more of a positive example when I'd learned how to nourish myself, is what I call it, like reconnect to my soul, give myself what I need, like actually practice some self-care, like on a deeper level. When I started to do that, one day my son laid a towel outside out the back of our house, and I was like, oh, what are you doing? And he said, I'm relaxing, mum, like you do, because he was younger, so he couldn't pronounce it properly. And I was like, that was a moment where I was like, yes, they're catching some of what I actually want them to catch. They're seeing that they should just lay the towel out and relax whenever they want. Like that's 100% okay, and I love that I'd been able to turn that around, that because they'd seen me do it. They'd seen me lay outside and lay in the
From cleaning
sun.
supplies to relaxing.
Relaxing. That's it. There
There's
is
some
some,
change happening in
that
your
is a
household. That's
serious
beautiful.
transformation. But it can be that simple and that powerful. And it really is. I feel like it's simple to make this switch to the more fulfilled, radiant, like woman that takes care of herself. But I know when you're in it, like I know at the beginning of my journey 3 years ago, and I'm sure you were the same, it felt so hard. Like I remember feeling like, what do you mean? I can't just not do these things. And I had all these stories, like I know all the women do, like if I don't do it, nobody else will. It's just easier if I do everything. And I remember one day saying to myself, is it really easier, Aston? Is it really easier that you do everything for everyone all of the time? And I had this moment of like, no, it's not easier. I'm literally burning myself out. I'm sick. I was losing my hair. Like I wasn't sleeping, I really had to get like, ask that question.
Radically honest with
Radically
yourself.
honest. Yeah.
It's really easier. And what is it costing me? And where did this come from? Right? Because we
Yeah.
cannot change what we cannot see. And so at the beginning of this work, it is very much about awareness.
Mm.
And often looking back to little me, little us,
Yes.
understanding the stories and the beliefs we might have absorbed about success and what makes you worthy and what makes you lovable,
Yes.
what makes a good worker or a good daughter or a good wife. Like
Mm.
my growing up for me, I'm very aware of my what I was programmed with was I had a dad, that was just so successful and just working so
Mm.
hard in his business, but he was never home. He was never
Yes.
home. He was home, he was working. And I was, little Emily is watching that and okay, like that's what it means to be successful. And my dad was very much in school. It didn't matter what I got in reading or writing or history, obviously straight A's, but when it came to like math and science and things that were business related, like that's what matters. And he was always like, Emily, that's how you make the real money in this world,
Oh,
being really good at math and science and data. And so I realized when I walked out that door 3 years ago that my whole career I'd been just trying to prove to my dad, like, look, I'm worthy. I'm enough.
yes.
And even though I would have moments of, every time I would get promoted or get a new team member or be managing some great new project, I would always call my dad and be like, dad, I got this. I did this. I'm making this much now. And he would always be like, that's great, Emily. That's awesome. And I never got the like effusive, like declaration of love I was looking for of like, you are
Yes.
worthy and you are enough. And I guess I finally had this realization towards the end of my 9 to 5 career of, it doesn't actually freaking matter. He doesn't even care. He really doesn't care. He just wants me to be happy. He wants me to be safe. He just wants me to have a roof over my head.
Yeah.
None of the things I was hustling towards and burning myself out for was actually making him love me anymore. And that is what my inner child, my
Mm.
little girl, little Emily, was so desiring throughout all of it, was just to prove to her dad that she was just as hard of a worker as he was.
Yes. And what breaks my heart, because this story is really common, like it's really
Oh,
common.
yeah. So common.
And, bless our parents because they did the best with what they could do. I really don't believe that healing can happen when you're blaming. So I'm all about like,
Yeah.
they did the best they could. You definitely validate that it wasn't what you needed and it would have been helpful to have like an open conversation. I always say, I'm like, the best thing we could do, I feel like, to heal this generational stuff is to sit down as a family and all
Mm.
have an open conversation about like, I felt this. I like that time or that thing. This is what that meant to me, but fully owning that this is what that meant to me. I made it mean this. This was the story I created. And then I lived this way. And to just get inside of each other like that and just hold that space, I feel is so healing. Like I did that in my relationship 3 years ago, and just that alone healed so much. And I continue to hold that space for clients, and it can be so healing. And I've already decided, like, I know I'm not perfect. I broke up with perfectionism, and I gladly, I'm proud to say that I broke up with perfectionism. I gave my perfectionism badge back, my busy badge, my
You
burnout
put the
badge.
perfectionist on the bench.
Yes, I was like done. Like because I got to a moment where I was like, Aston, it's either perfectionism or it's authenticity. Because like you share, the perfectionist is not authentic. She is
And
performing,
it's having a freaking life. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing about the perfection. And when we go back to the concept of aliveness, like the thing about perfectionism is it keeps us so boxed into what we will
Mm,
allow ourselves to experience in life, because the perfectionist within us only likes to do things that the perfectionist knows she is really, really good at.
yes.
So our life experiences that we allow ourselves to partake in becomes very small.
Yeah.
We're like, I'm not going to try that new dancing class. I'm not going to go on that trip where I don't know the language, or I'm not going to share my work with the world, or I'm not going to write that Instagram post. I'm not going to go on the podcast. I'm not going to take the
Yeah.
online course because I might not be perfect. And so we
Yes.
do the same shit over and over again as perfectionists, and we get really freaking bored. And as we've
Yes.
talked about before, we're performing this character that we've created, and as we've talked about, that we've created as a survival strategy, right? From our childhood of this is how I stay safe, this is how I get love, this is how I achieve success, is being freaking perfect all the time. And so it's so hardwired, and we keep playing the character and showing up, and we're bored and exhausted, and we're doing the same thing over and over again, and we're wondering why we don't feel alive. And it's just the perfectionist, she really, when she has the wheel, she just sucks all the juice out of life, doesn't she?
All the life. Yeah. And I see this in relationships so much because it literally means she can't be wrong. And like in a relationship, when you have to be right, where you are, and I get it, like no judgment. This was me 3 years ago. And so many women I work with, and I listen to them share that they want help and support, but they're like, he doesn't do it right. He doesn't do it my way. Like, I can't let him. And I'm like, I hear you. Like, I see you. I get it. But this is a pattern. This is a program. Like, go deeper. Where does this come from? What I remember saying to one woman in particular, so what happens if you're not right then? What does that mean? And she said, oh, well, then I'm not good enough. And then if I'm not good enough, for her, it was a father wound again, then I'm not loved. And it was just, for her, it was this moment of like, and I was like, so how does that make you feel in relationships? And she's like, well, I feel like I've won like a trophy for like a microsecond. That's what perfectionism and that chasing that next thing feels like. It's a quick hit of dopamine. Like, yes, I got it. But then there's this embarrassment, this horrible feeling, this emptiness, this disconnection, because you're disconnected from your own heart and soul and love, which is what you are. Because love doesn't need to be right or wrong. Love doesn't need to prove, love just is. It's just there. But, we get stuck in this cycle. And I know I see this so much with women in relationships, they will choose the limitation of being right and lose love, and I'm like, you get to choose. Like you don't have to let go of being right, but you get to. If you want more love, like you get to really get honest with yourself and say, like, is this really serving me? Is this desperate need to be right really worth it? I'm holding on to that limitation, and you get to hold on to your limitations if you hold on to them. Like you get to keep them. You can keep that limitation.
You get to keep your limitations.
You get to keep your limitations. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And it's like, but do you really want to keep that? Or do you want to open to love and the infinite possibilities that are available when you're willing to be wrong, when you're willing to fail, when you're willing to learn.
Imperfect, to quote unquote make a mistake, to quote unquote fuck it up. I don't believe in mistakes, by the way.
Me either. Like it's all perfect. Yes.
It's all perfectly imperfect. And that's the thing, is the juice and the mystery and the feeling of aliveness we all desire is never found in the known, is never found in having the perfect roadmap, is never found in controlling every aspect of our lives. It's always in the unknown and the uncomfortable, and it's in the trusting, and it's in the, okay, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to be a little imperfect at it, because you know what, I'm a human being, and you know what, I'm doing this for the first time, and you know what, I know that the more I repeat this, the more I do this, the more I will master it. And I know that in every mistake, again, air quotes, there is medicine for me, there is magic for me, there is growth for me. And we cut ourselves off from that when we live in the perfectionist, and we are bored. And something else that there was so much that came up for me when you were talking earlier, but something else that comes up for me with the perfectionist is, her logic is, as the perfectionist, the way I stay safe and achieve love and success is through being perfect. And so she never questions that logic. So when she does inevitably have a human moment and experiences, the pain and shame or embarrassment or rejection of that is inevitable as a human being.
Yes.
She reasons it's because she wasn't perfect enough.
Yes.
And so then she never questions the batshit crazy logic of the perfectionist. She just keeps striving harder and harder.
Yeah.
You weren't perfect enough. That is why you feel this way. That's why you feel pain. That's why you feel embarrassed. Instead of that self-love and that self-compassion and that, understanding of what is here for me, what is the growth available here for me. And it's such a vicious cycle.
It
I
is.
mean,
It's like, I know were talking about this before we went live with the podcast, but when you're in this cycle of perfectionism and you're burning out and you're bored and you're exhausted and you're disconnected, it is really hard to feel connected or you can't be vulnerable. You literally cannot be vulnerable. When you're addicted to perfectionism, there is
yes.
no room for vulnerability. So that means there's no room for intimacy and connection. And women all crave to be seen, heard, understood on that deeper level. And we want to be witnessed. We want to have connection. We want to feel that. But you can't. I remember 3 years ago feeling so disconnected from myself and my partner. And I was like,
Mm.
why? You know, and you can do the things on the surface, like go dating and, the surface things, like you said, like change jobs or whatever. But you get to a point where you realize, like you said, wherever I am, there I will be. And it's like deciding to then take that mirror, see it as an opportunity to look back at yourself and go, okay, well, what am I really scared of? Because the truth, like you said, I think perfectionism comes from fear. Like and being honest, I'm scared of intimacy, or I'm scared of connection, or I'm terrified of failing, or, actually getting to that deeper root thing underneath that is actually blocking you. And when you can just speak it out, like to yourself, write it, journal it, or to a coach, a friend, get in that safe space and release it. Like, I know for me, so much energy just unblocked just in just saying the thing, like, I'm scared of this or I'm fearful of that. And just in that, it was like the aliveness started to come back on. It's like I was getting turned on again by life because I wasn't turning everything down, because that's what the perfectionist does. Like, I describe it
She
like
dials down like the colors and the sound and the texture. It all
yes.
just becomes like muted and kind of flattened out. And
And it
it's
is all on one dial. It's like you can't turn the pain down and still experience these incredible highs. You just
oh
can't,
yes, yes, yes.
like it's all on one dial. So,
I love how you said that.
yeah, I
I love
get that,
how you
like,
said that.
we try and avoid the pain, but I'm like, what you avoid, you create. And literally, you turn the pain down and you just turn everything down. You turn the
Everything
joy,
down.
the pleasure,
Yes,
the light,
yes.
the love, the fun, the lightness. Like, no wonder women feel so heavy and exhausted and depleted because we're turning it all down. And again, is that really easier? Like, we're turning it down because it seems easier, it seems more convenient, like, but then, after years of this, you do start to go and question, like you said, like, is this really all there is to life or
Yeah.
relationships? And is this, like, what is it costing me? And is it really easier to continue to suppress and push down?
Shove it down and
You know?
avoid it and numb it out. And I just want to go back to what you said there. It was so beautiful with the dial, right? Of
Yes.
turning that is all. Yeah. Like I'm a big believer that the degree of aliveness we experience is in direct proportion to our ability and our willingness to feel all of life. And you can't
Yes.
selectively feel life. You can't be like, well, I'm only going to feel the highs and I'm not going to feel the pain. And when you turn down that dial of your willingness to be open to life and receive life, it all
Mm,
becomes muted. It all goes into black and white. And I think so
yes.
much of it too, especially as the perfectionist, right? Let's bring it all back to her.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's this unwillingness to even feel joy and excitement about so much that is happening, so much of the magic and the celebration that
Mm,
you're growing into and pushing into on a daily basis. Like if you're
yeah.
really look for it, there's always a win, there's always growth. Because she's always like, that's not good enough. You didn't hit
Yes.
this goal and it's not perfect. And so we're not going to get excited about that. We're not going to celebrate that. And this feeling of, not being enough or pain, I'm going to numb that out. I'm going to scroll that away. I'm going to wind that away. I'm going to Netflix that away. And I'm not going to feel any of it. And so it's just like the box that we feel of human emotions becomes so small, because we won't feel the highs, because we don't want to be disappointed. We don't want to, we're not worthy of celebration. We're not perfect enough. And we're like, I'm going to numb out the lows. And so we're just living in this tiny little thing. And we're like, where's that aliveness thing I see people talking about? Where's my, or as you so beautifully call it, where's my radiance? And it's like, that's available when you feel all of it. But it's
when you get outside the box. And I remember I had to realize I put myself in the box, like exactly how we were saying. It's like no one put you in there. Maybe someone convinced you or programmed you to believe it would be safe in there, but you're no longer, we're adults now. So we get to reparent and we get to go, okay, hang on a minute. Is there really a box? Who put me in that box? Does the box even have a lid? Like, no, I can get out of this, and there's more of me out here. And, I'm constantly learning more about myself. And I love it when my clients share that with me, that, like I was saying to a client, has learned that she's quite awkward and she spent her whole life trying not to be awkward. And I was like, I said to her, I actually love that about you. I love your goofiness. Like, bring that out. Like, own it. Like I was saying to you, that part of me that I rejected for a long time was cute. Like everyone would say, oh, you're so cute, Aston. I used to hate it, especially in my teenage years. I was like, I'm a teenager. I'm not meant to be cute, But now I love that part of myself, because like we were saying, I'm no longer rejecting parts of myself. I'm accepting all of myself so I can love all of myself. And just because I can be cute doesn't mean I can't also be sexy or strong. Or I had a beautiful reflection from a client the other day that she said, I really needed a strong, powerful, but open coach. Like often we see strong and powerful as like the walls are up. There's not this openness. There's not, she said, open and vulnerable. Normally people don't use those words together, strong and powerful, and open and vulnerable. They'll say, oh, it's one or the other. And like we were saying, no, it's this and that.
No. Vulnerability is power. I know we both believe
strength.
That.
Yeah. True strength is that vulnerability. And that's what the perfectionist is trying to avoid, like truly, I think that's why I felt weak, so often 3 years ago, because I wasn't being vulnerable. I wasn't speaking my truth. I was saying what I thought they wanted to hear. And it was crazy when I would do that, like you did with your dad. And then it gets reflected back and it's like, that's not even what they wanted to hear. And you're like, why am I doing this? This is nuts. Like,
yeah, no, it's powerful in those moments when it's truly the logic is confronted and you're like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't making much sense.
Yeah.
But the aliveness and the power in vulnerability and in your authentic expression and in honoring your weird and your wild and your awkwardness and your imperfections is truly where, I mean, for me, so much of the juice of life is, so much of my joy is. Like, even for me, one of my quote unquote imperfections was always that I was like, oh, I am so bad at public speaking. I am so bad at public speaking. I am not perfect enough. I am this, I am that. And the perfectionist, when I got into coaching, my inner perfectionist was like, we are not going to be seen. We will not do that. We will not do webinars. We will not do podcasts.
We're doing it.
We will not do group coaching. We will only, do one-on-one coaching, because that's where no one will see if you make a mistake, right? And I really started to chip away at that, in the past year. And I found so much power and so much support when I was really honest. I was like, look, y'all, like on my community with my community on Instagram, or even with webinars I'm doing or group classes, I'm like, so there's a part of me that finds this really scary, by the way. And, and even in that moment, so many women are like, oh my God, that is so amazing that you're doing this, because you know what? I would love to get up there and do something, but I am so afraid of public speaking too. And I like black out whenever I public. I'm like, I know, I used to have that experience. And so I've just loved this journey for myself the past few months, even of just really confronting this and really being vulnerable about it, and really allowing myself to be imperfect in it. And I had a huge self-celebration moment a few weeks ago where I did a corporate webinar on burnout for a large company. I'd never done a burnout webinar for a large company before. So I was definitely a little like, you're doing my anxiety reducing techniques like before, but honestly, I was so proud of myself. It went so well. And at the end, I was like, oh, there are some things I could have done differently. Like I could have managed the Zoom rooms this way. I could have engaged, but you know what? I didn't know that until I freaking did it.
Yes.
Right. I wouldn't have had that knowledge and those learnings if I hadn't done it. But I was celebrating. So I'm like, Emily, 3 years ago would have probably not even done the freaking webinar, because she'd have been like, let me just sit here and plan how I can deliver a webinar to a massive corporation by just practicing in my head.
Yes.
She never would have allowed herself to do it in the first place. And I probably would have gotten off and had a meltdown about like that. I could have done something differently. Right. But I could see that my perfectionist was so on the bench because I got off the call. I was like, yes, that was great. And these are the 2 things we're doing differently next time.
Yes. Amazing. I love that, because you literally can't take feedback when you're in the perfectionism.
No.
Like you can't take feedback.
There's
or
no
bad.
room to grow. I am perfect.
There's no room to grow. Like you've made it. And it's like, well, no wonder you feel dead inside, because like that's not the point of life, is it? The point of life is learning, is growth, is taking feedback, is always getting better. There is always more. Like, like we were saying, what if it wasn't about getting to the mountain? What if it was about enjoying how you're feeling on the way? Like, and I know we were talking about this before we started with women, that sometimes they'll listen to a podcast or read a book and they're like, they're doing all the things. And this comes back to the whole, I'm doing everything I should be doing. Why aren't I feeling the way I should be feeling? And it's like, well, it's in that should, isn't it? Should you really be doing that? Like, whenever I start shoulding on myself, that's normally an indication for me to stop and pause. It's like shitting on yourself,
Oh my gosh. In my world, should is a dirty, dirty word. And when, when I hear that word, alarm bells go off and I'm like, oh no, let's talk about this.
Yes.
Because shoulding, and we're just so cute with our shoulding all over the place, right? It cracks me up every time, but it's such a driver, right, of the burnout and the overwhelm and the lack of radiance and aliveness. Because when we spend so much of our day overscheduled, overplanned, working and momming and all of the things, and then when we have this precious free time on nights and weekends, we spend it shoulding all over our place and doing shit that does not light us up, that is just an obligation, a box to check, a to-do list item. I'm a big believer we live in a world that is obsessed with personal productivity and personal improvement.
Yes.
And so it's, let me squeeze an outcome that will improve me in some way out of every single thing I do. So it's no longer about, let me do something that lights me up. Let me play. Let me just purely enjoy and just get lost in the moment and be in my body and connect with nature, connect with myself. It's like, how can I get better today? How can I be more productive today?
With that shoulding, there's no flexibility. It's like, sometimes women will say to me like, oh, I should have a morning routine. I'm like, will that work for you? How will you feel if you have a morning routine? Like, I know when I became a mum, I have morning routines, but they're flexible. Every day they change. Like, I know the things that light me up, and some of the things are so simple. Like, I love sitting outside in the morning. I don't go straight to the dishwasher. I don't go straight to the washing machine. No, I get up, I breathe, like I just breathe and just feel my body. And I'm like, good morning, beautiful. Like I just wake up and, just say good morning to myself.
Good morning, gorgeous.
Yes. And then I head outside and like I hug my family. We always love to have a kiss and cuddle in the morning, and then just go and have my breakfast outside. Like the first thing I do is nourish my soul, fill myself up, get in the sun, not because I should, because I feel like I want to do that. I feel like I'm listening to what I'm feeling and I'm honoring it. And I say this to women all the time. Instead of what should you do, what do you need? Or what do you feel in this moment? What would make me
desire in this moment?
What would make me feel nourished? Or, how can I honor myself? How can I just honor myself right now instead of because we're addicted to doing and addicted to productivity, and often at the cost of the art of fulfillment. There's, yes, the science of success, but there's this other side of like humanness and fulfillment and feeling. We are feeling beings, and we're not allowing that space for it. And it's incredible the gold that you can find in that stillness or that space to just be with yourself or be with nature, like you said. And it's so simple. We overcomplicate it. Like, it doesn't need to be a yoga class or it can be, but it doesn't need to be. And I think the key for me, like you said, is as soon as I start making it a should, I actually stop straight away, because
Stop and drop, shake it off.
Yeah. Like, you're better actually to sit and do nothing, because you're going to do it to achieve something rather than feel something, and feel whatever is there for you to feel. And I think it's it can be hard in today's world that is so addicted to what are you doing? What do you do on the weekend? Like, it's this doing all the time. No one ever says, like, how are you being? How are you feeling?
Yeah.
Like,
what are you up to?
yeah, what's on your heart? Like,
what are you doing? Yeah.
What's alive for you right now? Like, can you imagine saying to someone, what's alive for you right now? They'd be like, wow, me and my husband ask each other that question all the time. I literally asked him this morning as we're having breakfast. We have breakfast together. I was like, what's alive for you right now? And he's like just sharing what's alive for him. And then I do the same. But that's not really considered normal, And then we get these surface level answers of like, how are you? Good. Not really. Like, everyone's fine. Like, fine.
Let me
fine.
just tell you what I'm doing.
Yeah, basically.
Let me read off my list of to-dos and accomplishments.
Yes.
And this is how we will connect.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, we are energetic beings.
Yes.
And we very much live in a culture that believes the more I do, the better I will feel. And a big distinction I like to make with my clients is it's actually the better I feel. Like, honestly, the more I do.
100%. I fully agree.
Thing is, it's like when a lot of women, when I start working with them around burnout and overcoming burnout and overwhelm, they're like, well, I don't have time to feel good. Okay. I don't have time for pleasure and joy and play.
Oh my God. I hear that. I hear that so much. And they're like, I'm a mom. Like, pleasure doesn't apply to me, or like, I'm a mom, I don't have time for pleasure. I'm a mom, I don't have time for feminine energy. And I get it. I can't judge you, because 3 years ago I had all of those same excuses, but that's what they are, excuses and stories. And it's all coming from that perfectionism. And it's not the truth. Like, because I have the same belief. Like, one of my kind of mantras I now say to myself is, when I rest, I have the energy to get it all done. Whereas it used to be, when I get everything done, then I can rest. I mean, just, you can hear the difference in that. It's like, that's not going to happen. That's a lie.
It's like a foundational, like fundamental philosophical shift, right?
Yeah.
And I always say with my clients too, I'm like, okay, darling, like, what happens when you roll into the office and you're burned out and you're underslept and you're bitter and you're resentful? I'm like, how impactful are you at the office? Yeah. Okay. So you're like snapping at coworkers. You're like, you're not creative. You're not coming up with innovative ideas when you're in that space, which is what gets, the promotions and the accolades, and you're not thinking clearly. You're going home. You're fighting with your partner. Like, everything is just heavier. So I'm like, okay,
yelling at the kids. Yeah. It's so much heavier.
You walk in on Monday morning and you're well rested and you've just done things all weekend that really turn you on and light you up, and you're just well rested and nourished. What happens at the office now? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I'm more productive. I have more energy. I can focus. I'm more creative. And at home, like, exactly that. You're having more harmonious relationships. So I'm like, tell me again, it's selfish. Tell me again, you don't have time. It's not selfish. It's to me
not.
These selfish things you can do, tending to your own energy and cleaning up your own backyard, and so when you're in a space energetically where you feel good, that quality of your actions increases, the quality of your relationships increases. It's like, this gets to be approached with the same ferocity you approach your career, you approach, driving to soccer practice, like whatever it is, like
Yes,
this is
yeah.
important.
It's so
Right?
important. And the alternative is the resentment builds. The resentment builds because that's where the resentment's coming from. We're neglecting our own needs. We're abandoning ourselves. We're literally thinking, if I do all this stuff, like we've been saying, I'll get what I really want at the end. But you're not. So let's give it to ourselves now. You can have it now. And if you have it now, then your partner can have that from you now. Your kids can have that from you now. Your work, it's just crazy that we think that giving from empty is going to get a better result than giving from full. It's like you would never say that a car is going to run better with no fuel. Like, it's just crazy, isn't it? Like,
let's put this car with no gas and a flat tire out on the highway and see what
yeah,
happens.
and just see what it does. Like, literally goes nowhere, and then that's exactly what we're doing to ourselves. And I love that more women are having this conversation and they're sharing that, like, I went from burnout to actually filling up and putting myself first, and everybody is benefiting because of it, because I think we need more women to share. I was there too. I did the switch. I know it seems scary, but once you do, you give another sister permission. Like, you give another woman permission. And then you also, like, I gave my husband permission. When I was looking after myself better, he was like, wow, seeing you look after yourself has made me realize I'm not looking after me. So how can I be the dad, the husband that I want to be? I can't be. It starts with you. It starts with me. Like, just that's where it starts. And that's love. It's loving. It's not selfish. And I think we really need to break up with that, because it's not serving anybody at all. No one wins from that place.
Yeah. And again, where it really hits home with my clients is when they truly understand how it's impacting their career to be in this space of the martyr, of the overworker, of the perfectionist, of the burnt out woman. It's not doing anyone any favors. And, it's felt. It is, you're not fooling anyone when you show up and you're miserable and resentful and exhausted. I'm so happy to see that paradigm. It's real, of the hustle and the grind. And I remember my last startup I worked at before I left was, because again, hustle and grind was so glamorized. It's like we had t-shirts like every day I'm hustling. It was just this thing. And but no surprise, one of the number one source of turnover at this company was burnout.
Oh.
And
yeah. And you can't just replace us like you do something that breaks in the house. Do you know what I mean? Like, or a part in the car, but we kind of treat ourselves like we are just replaceable. But you can't buy another you. You can't buy back that time. You can't buy back that relationship or that connection. You can't buy back your kids when they're little. So I'm like, what are we doing? Like,
we're missing the point, right? We are missing the point of life, and that it is not about the achieve, hustle, grind at all costs, reach the top of the mountain, race off to the next one. And we are, I think, really shifting to this understanding that, and my mentor always says this, an unhappy journey will never lead to a happy destination. Right? Like, we're here to enjoy the ride, and we know, we get to have big, beautiful goals and milestones as humans. They help, they're our North Star, they help center us, they help move us forward. But we all know how fleeting the feeling is of, whoa, I did the goal. And it's in the mountaintop, it's in the climbing moments of life where the juice is, and it's savoring the journey in the now. And the big vacations were great, but
but why not create a life that you don't need to
aliveness now on your weekends, like you so beautifully said, in your morning coffee and in the sunshine and the connection with your husband. It's like we can access that feeling of pleasure and aliveness now. It's available to us now. It's just a choice of, I'm going to start seeing things differently. I'm going to start getting out of my freaking head and into my body. And I'm going to start looking for reasons to be in awe. of life,
Yes. And there's
the
so
world.
many, like, oh my God. Like every night we go outside and look at the stars. Like, just
Oh,
go outside and look at the stars. I have no one can look at the stars and not be in awe.
let
You
me go
just
back to Instagram. This is boring. I'm gonna go back to scrolling.
Yeah, like really put your phone down, go and stand outside and look at the stars. And, I know for me, it's grounding, but it's heart expanding. And I'm instantly taken back to that childlike wonder and awe of
Yeah.
like,
Oh.
that's just incredible, like, and again, so simple, so powerful. Like I'm out there in my pajamas, like there's nothing you need to prepare. There's nothing you need to do. You don't need all the right stuff. All the perfectionist wants to have all the right things. You don't need anything. You just go and be there and experience it. And it's so powerful. It will move your soul. Let life move you. That's what I feel like we're meant to be here moving each other's hearts and souls. Life is meant to be touching us. It's meant to hurt sometimes. Like it's meant to. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not broken. It's not wrong. You're not getting it right. Like we've got it wrong. Like it's meant to
Right?
hurt
The
sometimes.
perfectionists use it as such a moral,
Yes.
really terrible failure when there is pain felt, right? Because this shouldn't be
Yeah.
happening. Why are we feeling this? Where is that? Just as you said,
It's
that's
whereas
life. That's
it's
to
the
be
human
human.
experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
And
I mean, it's I learn so much from pain. I love to say all my pain has a powerful purpose. Always.
mm,
When I'm willing to
mm,
learn from it, sit with it, lean into it. And when I try to run from it and avoid it, it consumes me. I become the pain. That's really what ends up happening. Instead of it just being an energy, like emotion that just goes through me and comes out the other side, like cracks me open a little bit to something that I wasn't seeing, like brings that dark bit into the light. But because I don't reject it anymore, I'm like welcoming it. Like I really see it as like a little child or my little girl, like welcome that, like hold it, welcome it, and then you can learn from it. But I mean, if you're rejecting it, like you're rejecting part of yourself. And if you are rejecting part of yourself, I guarantee that you're rejecting parts of other people, parts of your partner, parts of your children. Like it's all a reflection. It all comes back to our relationship with self. So, how deeply do you love yourself? How deeply do you trust yourself? How deeply do you listen to yourself? Because that will then reflect in your relationships. And the last area I really wanted to touch on is how all of this impacts how much we actually trust ourselves. Because I know we've both experienced this with women and in ourselves, like this lack of self-trust in
mm.
who we are, what we're doing, the relationships we're choosing. Like, the perfectionist wants to make the right decision all the time and please. So they're often getting everybody's opinion and everybody's perspective.
They're
Getting,
crowdsourcing
oh,
everything from what mascara should I buy to what diet
oh,
should I be on? Where am I going for vacation? What do you think of this text, this guy? What do you think of this email?
yes.
Yeah, what do you think I should do? I don't know. What do you think I should do? And just like completely lacking in that I got myself. I know who I am. I know what matters to me. I know what my desires are. I know what my needs are. I know what my standards are. I know what my boundaries are, because that gets to be the lens that we make
Mm,
decisions about everything.
yes.
And it's like when we are in touch with that, it becomes so much easier. But when we're in the pleasing and the perfecting, we're like, oh, I don't know. let me know what you think. And it just completely eradicates our self-trust. And something that is really active on my heart with the perfectionist and self-trust is how we talked about this earlier, but the perfectionist, right? She only likes to do things that she's really good at, that she's going to be perfect at. So she tends to avoid
Mm,
big time, because she's like, I don't want to have
yes.
that conversation. I don't want to do that thing because it's going to be uncomfortable. That uncomfortable feeling might come up or with that person, or
Yes.
I might make
Yes.
a mistake. So let me just avoid it. Let me stick my head in the sand. Let me break my commitment to myself. Let me break my commitment to another person. And to me, avoidance is one of the just number one drivers in lack of self-trust, because when we're avoiding something, we're very aware of what we're doing. We try to make ourselves forget, right?
Yes.
But it's this like heavy energy that's just always lingering. And we're like, oh my God, when is it? When is it the gig finally going to be up and I'm going to have to confront this thing I've been avoiding, and you're living in this constant state of fear? And no, can I keep avoiding the conversation? Can I keep avoiding that email? And it just
Yes.
has you waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly, and you don't freaking trust yourself, right? Because you're like,
Yeah.
wow, here I am knowing exactly what I should do, what exactly I get to do to push into my comfort zone, out of my comfort zone and into something new or exciting that I really desire to experience. And that would be really cool. And I've been seeing all these other people do it, and that would make me feel really alive, but I'm going to avoid it because I'm not going to be perfect. And oh no, like, oh, this isn't fair.
Yes.
It's just
And
such
it
a,
just goes round and round and round. And I do
yeah.
see this so much in relationships where they don't have the tough conversation because
Mm.
they're not going to get it right. They're not going to say the right thing. What
Mhm.
if something happens, and I get it. That's one side. But like you said, the conversation is what will set you free. That very thing you're avoiding is the
It's
thing will set you
yes,
free,
yes,
Like, so
yes.
it's like just do the thing as best you can do it in that moment. Like, there is no like, perfectionism is not even real. This is what I constantly had to remind myself 3 years ago when I was starting to transition out of it. It's not even real. It's not even possible. I'm a human being, so it's actually impossible for me to be perfect. I'm not a robot. I'm not perfectly programmed. I have flaws. So why am I out here acting like I don't have them or trying to hide them because I know I have them?
Aren't I
No.
fooling everyone?
And you're not, because you're not fooling yourself. And yeah, it is so incredible how when you start to face this, that you build trust. You literally build self-trust and in turn build confidence. And that's what you've been doing with like deciding, bringing it into the light that, oh, I can't do podcasts, or I'm not very good at speaking. And then you're like, okay, well, what if I can? What if I can do the thing I'm avoiding? And what happens when I do the thing I'm avoiding? Oh, I build trust. I build confidence. I'm like, I can do this,
And you set yourself free, as you said earlier. It's literally, it's one of my favorite questions to ask my clients. I'm like, okay, so what are you avoiding?
Yes.
Because that is always the portal to like the next level of our liberation, of our freedom, of our joy, of our bliss, of our authentic
Yes.
expression. It's in what we're avoiding.
Yes. Oh,
And
I love this. This is so amazing.
oh,
And this is such a magic space to end in, because that would be
okay.
my invitation for everybody listening. What are you avoiding? Like, this is the question we need to keep asking ourselves. What am I avoiding? How can I do that very thing I'm avoiding and set myself free? Like, what is it for you? It could be a tough conversation. It could be putting yourself first. You're avoiding putting yourself first because of that massive, never ending to do list, which is called a never ending to do list for a reason, because it's never meant to end. So don't try and finish it. What would happen if you didn't finish it? What would happen if you adopted what we've been talking about and literally decided, like, for me, it's that mantra of when I put myself first, when I rest, I have energy to get it done. And Emily, you had another one which was very similar, just what happens if I give myself what I need first? Then I
Yeah.
actually have the energy to show up in the way I want to show up, to be the mom I want to be the wife I want to be the coworker, to be the boss, the businesswoman. Like, we're beating ourselves up because we're not who we want to be, and we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to be that. It's like, this is our opportunity. What am I avoiding? And how can I lean into that, and
Yeah, and
free
how can
myself?
I fill up on what I
Yes.
love and what makes me feel alive and brings me that sense of pleasure and play and joy, and really reminding yourself it is not selfish.
Yes.
It improves the quality of your life, of your actions, of your relationships. of your work. It's just it's everyone wins, and
Yes.
also, but let's not do it because it's for other people. Let's do it because
Yes.
that's your
It's for you.
birthright to
Yes.
feel good and to feel alive and to enjoy your time on this fiery ball of existence, hurtling through
Exactly.
space and time,
It's just
you
crazy,
know?
isn't it? When you think of it, when you zoom all the way out like that, it's like, this is nuts. Like, this is amazing, you know? So, oh, I've
Mm.
loved this conversation so much. I know that we have covered so much ground. It's been absolutely gold, and we could probably go for at least another hour.
I
Like I
know,
said,
I
this
think
could have been two podcasts,
we
but
could have
I
kept going, but we gotta stop.
yes, but I know that the women listening have pulled so much gold from this, and if you have, please tag me, Aston Simmons, and Emily Todd. I'll have all the links below. I'll have Emily's links below as well. I love the way this woman really pulls apart perfectionism and just brings it into the light. And it's so powerful, and it's so simple, and something that I know you'll be able to relate to because Emily's been through it, I've been through it, and when a woman's been through it and then she shares it, it just lands differently. You just feel it because there's a reason you can relate because she's been through it too. And this is the gift of the authenticity, of the vulnerability, of letting go of perfectionism. We can actually then start to relate to each other, can't we, on this like human level? Because
Humans
we're
as
humans. It's like I'm not pretending to be perfect. You're not pretending to be perfect. And we're like, oh wow, I can relate to you. I can see myself in you. Like, isn't that funny? Like,
well,
I
and,
feel like
like, in those moments, it's always so beautiful because 'cause you're like, "Oh, I feel less alone."
yes, and seen and
You
heard and
too.
understood. And honestly, I think if we could drop perfectionism, like the sister wound, the mother wound would literally
Oh,
disappear, wouldn't it? It
yeah,
would just like
yeah.
wouldn't even exist. So, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but I just
Well,
wanted to
that's
plant
a
that seed.
podcast for another
Yeah.
day.
I just want to plant that seed that literally, if we could just let go of the perfectionism, and like we were saying, we can hold on to that limitation, but then we get to keep it. So if you don't want to keep that limitation, let's just all drop it. Let's drop it together. We're not alone. Let's drop it together, and let's literally lean into what we're avoiding and free ourselves to, be ourselves, to be alive, to experience this life and be the radiant, alive women that we came here to be. Like, that is my wish. I know that's really a big part of your mission as well, Emily. So, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for sharing your heart and bringing your soul. And we're sending you all so much love. And thank you for being here.
Oh, I have been so lit up and turned on by this conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna have trouble falling asleep tonight. I am just so lit up by you. Thank
I
you.
love that. Thank you, beautiful.